without much ado, I'm going to request my speakers to share their knowledge as a keynote initially. So I would like to start with Madhavi. So Madhavi, would you like to initiate the learning session? Thank you.
Runa, thank you so much for having me for this session. And I know when you reached out to me, I did tell you that I have time issues, but I think you're very convincing, and I'm so glad I'm part of this panel. So I think from a point of what are the HR strategies and innovation and banking and fintech in this new world we are faced in. I think first I would like to acknowledge that these are really tough times for all across, especially people who are losing their jobs or who have to relocate because of health and safety reasons. And I think we must acknowledge that as a profession, as an HR profession. So I think that's something that I think that empathy that we need to build for people, I think that's something that I would keep at the sort of base level in terms of what we should be looking at. But going a little bit more into the detail on HR and in organizations, I think in my opinion HR has an even more important role today than ever. Balancing organization needs with individual requirements. And I think the way the organizations are going, and not just banking and fintech but across, I think they will continue to need to instill and reinforce agile execution and build better resilience, to whatever's changing, because things are evolving very rapidly, and also build flexibility into work arrangements to maintain productivity. So it's kind of, a lot of things happening together, and organizations will need to do all that. And given that there is reduced social interaction with teams, with customers, there is a need to build critical digital, emotional, and social skills, really, so skills like leading teams virtually, we've never done that really for long periods of time, or building cohesion in teams, virtually, or even engaging customers remotely. These skills have to be enhanced rapidly, I think. So that's one area of focus we all should be sort of aware of. I think one of the most important challenges, because this whole work from home is continuing, and what I've understood is that given what's happening in our country, this probably will continue for some more time. I think the challenge will be to figure out how does the vision of the organization, bind the employees in a remote world. So when you're in the office, there's a lot of interaction, you kind of reinforce all of the stuff. But when you're working virtually, how do you do that, So building a connected culture when most people are working remotely, I think is a challenge. But our experience over the last few months has been very encouraging. And even though the workplace has actually shifted into the homes, the values and beliefs, which are important aspects that bind the organization together, will remain the same. Nothing changes on those, right? And the question really that HR has is, how do we ensure people are living the values even as they work remotely? And how do we make virtual connects as effective and meaningful as face-to-face connects? And at the basic level for HR, I think we will need to digitize the entire employee life cycle, because this working remotely is, I think, here to stay for a bit. And ultimately, all of this has to relate to the business strategy. So we can't work in isolation, right? Now, I think one of the things that I thought I'll focus on is even before the current situation, there's been so much talk on future of work and advancement in technology. And, there's been a lot of discussions around skills needed to move to the next level. I think this pandemic has just made the action more urgent. And I think it has sort of shown us that we can do things if we really want to. And I'll just touch on a few areas in HR, because we're talking about HR really. I think the first one for me, which I think was pleasantly surprised by, was remote hiring and virtual onboarding. So when the lockdown happened, we were like struggling. We had people who were supposed to join us. So how do you get them onboarded virtually? So the whole remote hiring and onboarding process has evolved for us over a couple of months, and I think as we've also seen a shift in the mindset of the hiring managers, because everybody prefers the in-person interviews. But I think we're seeing the shift to being comfortable with virtual interviews, And since April, we've actually onboarded about 1,000 people virtually. And that certainly has helped us, because we said we will not delay the start date for candidates, because they would have left jobs elsewhere and would have committed to joining us. So I think that's something that we kind of focused on from an HR process point of view. And I think from a recruitment perspective, one of the areas we are looking at is that, and it's an idea worth exploring for all industries, is just the availability of new talent pools with this remote working. People who can't come to work to office physically because of personal reasons or persons with disabilities, etc. We just need to ensure that we tap that huge talent pool available, which is location agnostic. It could be also talent in smaller cities, which we don't really go to sometimes because we feel that the person has to relocate to a larger city. So I think those are things that are playing out, and we need to look at that. The second area I wanted to cover was learning. And I think luckily for us at Deutsche Bank, we've always had a focus on virtual learning to give staff the flexibility to learn what they like and are passionate about, and at their own time and pace. So what we did was that post this pandemic situation where work from home became even more essential, we actually just sort of built on this platform that we had, and we revisited the learning curriculum, and we said we added more sort of blended learning methods in our learning offering really. And we're also now, we've done that earlier, but we're doing that even more, is leveraging skills of our leaders to be trainers. So leaders as teachers, that program we've run, which has been very effective. And we've made these very short modular sessions, not long sessions, because, virtual sessions, once they cross a particular time, I think are difficult to keep attention of people, right? The other thing that we're doing from a learning point of view is we're looking at what are the new skills that are required, to sort of to go forward. And those are skills we are, working on, and we're trying to see how do we build those across the organizations. And I think, so just the last area that I'll talk about is obviously this pandemic is here to stay. I think while of course the vaccine will happen and whatever, but in the next sort of the way we see it, the way next 6 to 12 months, the return to work will obviously be staggered and will depend a lot on how the environment is shaping up. So just explaining to people that, when you come back to your return to work is not going to be the old ways of working. When you come to work in the new environment, the social distancing will have to continue. You will have to wear masks. It's not like the old times when you just sort of tell somebody, let's go have lunch together and, catch up on this issue, or huddle in a small group in a conference room. So I think that whole change management, I think, will be a big shift. And that's something that, we'll have to plan for. I mean, it's a while away because right now it's work from home as far as possible, but we've got to prepare for that. So those, I think, are the key sort of from my point of view, areas that HR will need to focus on: the culture, the vision. How do you embed the values and beliefs in a virtual working? How do you just build a connected and more engaged sort of workforce? That is something that is a focus area.